pretty thick. Let's all stand, and at this time, I'd like to introduce to you Miss Sara Weaver, and let's thank her for opening up that aspect of her life, for coming to us this evening. All right, you may be seated. Welcome. How are you doing?
Thank you so much.
We are very excited about this, and when I learned of her story and the things we're about to share with you, the story continues, and it just gets really good from this point on. I just thought, we got to share this with folks, but my living room isn't big enough, so here we are tonight, and I really am appreciative of this dear lady, again, opening up her heart and life to share what we're about to share with you this evening. Quick couple of questions for you. How many of you remember Ruby Ridge? And this age group particularly, that was a very vivid time. We were out of country at the time and remember watching on CNN all those events unfold. How many of you just feel like after re-watching that whole ordeal, there's this gut-wrenching, boy, I wish we could do something, and it really brings out a lot of emotions, doesn't it? I love how the interview ends, and that is to put in perspective, there's two sides to this story, isn't there? There's lives on both sides greatly affected by this. So, got a few things that we're just going to talk about with you this evening, and you wanted to express some gratitude as well, so I'm going to let you talk there. You're ready to burst, it looks like. Go ahead.
I just want to say thank you all so much for being my guests, for taking time out of your life tonight to hear my story. It means a lot. I lived this for a lot of years, and when it was going on, there were so many opinions flying around and so many media articles and things going on, and I still live with it every day, but I live with it in a new light, and that's really my heart to share with you tonight. And I just pray that the lessons maybe that I have learned through this, maybe some of you can take with you, and that it will bless your life. So thank you so much for coming and being our guests, because you guys truly are the guests of honor to me.
You are about 7 years old when your family moves from Iowa out to Idaho and start this, if I may, an idyllic life. I like the idea of having my own cabin up on a mountain and having some chickens and goats, and there's nothing wrong with that. For about a decade, you lived a very nice life up there, and then the events unfolded at Ruby Ridge, which, by the way, this is just a little trivia for you. It's not Ruby Ridge. I don't know if you knew that or not. It's actually what?
Well, it was Caribou Ridge and Ruby Creek, and Ruby Ridge was a name that the media slapped on it, and it stuck. So
it's been labeled that to this day. Saving ink, you know how that is, and cost cutter must have been there or something. But you're 16 years old, and this breaks loose. We just watched the depiction there, so we don't really have to rehash that again with you. In fact, you've only seen the video yourself about 3 or 4 times. That's my 4th time, and it gets me choked up every time. And what we want to do is pick up with where we left off in the timeline. Dad comes out. We're very relieved to see that there was sort of a justice there. 3.1 million, that sounds like a lot, but when you consider the lives lost and the ordeal, it's just nothing, and that went fairly quickly. What we want to find out is what happened next. You alluded to it in the video. What happened to this young girl after all this begins to settle down and life goes on, and where are you left there, Sarah?
I don't think life really went on very well for me. I was depressed for many, many years. I was struggling with, why am I still alive? Why am I still here? Why did I lose my best friend and my little brother and my mom? And I was sort of left to carry on. And the pain was just an incredible burden. I felt like the weight of the world was just on my shoulders continually. And everyone I would meet that knew my story would express their own grief and their own pain and their own anger, and I kind of had to be there for them as well, even though it wasn't in me to do that. And I tried filling the hole in my heart with a lot of things. I tried running for a lot of years. I tried hiding in a cave, and I tried just forgetting that that was my past. I thought if I could just create the perfect little life for myself, that everything would be okay. You know, if I had the kids and the dog and the beautiful house, and at one point I was pregnant, I gained 60 pounds with my first child, and I thought, well, if I can just lose the weight, then I'll be happy again. And all of these outside things I was looking to for security and for happiness, and to sort of just help me forget what had happened to me, because it was just such an odd thing that no one could relate. I couldn't relate to anyone going through that. I couldn't just say, hey, I went through this, and say, oh yeah, I know how you feel. No one really knew how I felt. So it was very lonely. I was struggling with loneliness on an incredible level. And so, you know, trying to fill it with all the wrong things, with all the material things of life that the world tells you is going to make you happy, just didn't work.
You're going to catch on here a little bit that we're hoping to take this story and help maybe someone here or several who are going through various things. And as we discussed your plight, we talked about loneliness, which you just mentioned, and the isolation. We talked about a bitterness,
yes.
The depression, of course.
Anger.
A lot of darkness. You used that word a lot when we first met and talked. One of the things that really fascinated me was she felt a great burden to fix the family name. In the newspaper, they put a little blurb out just recently on the net that we were having this event, and everybody these days gets to make a comment on it. One of the comments was, how do they word that? That we can't relate to what you went through. Why should we even try? I kind of lost what the exact wording was there, but you were trying to fix the family name. There was an attack, really. Well, he deserved it. That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Was Randy had earned this and deserved it, and so why should we feel sorry for them? And she said that one comment was what we felt the entire world thought of us.
Mm-hmm.
And she, as a young girl, had this perspective that everybody thinks we're just crazy. So you had a huge burden to fix that. You want to help us relate to that a little bit?
Absolutely. When we lost my mother, I sort of felt the need to step into her place and take on the responsibility of making sure everyone was going to be okay, and sort of stepping into her role. And I was not equipped for that at all. Control was a big thing. If I could control everything around me and make sure everyone was safe, then I wouldn't lose someone again. And that's just unrealistic, and it just creates anxiety in you because you're constantly watching for the next thing that might happen. There's a lot of fear involved. And so that was, losing my mom was a catalyst for that.
I appreciate what you said about control. How many of you are old enough to realize we're not in control of very much at all? But we desperately want to get control. And the harder we try, actually, in some senses, we make it worse. One of the things we can talk about, all these different emotions, and we're listing them off here bit by bit, but the biggest one was fear.
Yes.
And this was something Sarah taught me when I met her. How this worked out, by the way, is my wife brought home a newspaper article, and she said, you need to read this. And it was a very well-written article, front page article here of a local newspaper, and it really touched my heart. It wouldn't let me alone for 3 days. I just kept thinking of it. They revealed in the article where she worked. So I called where she works and I got to meet this girl and visit with her. And as a pastor, I was really excited to hear this story and said, would you come to our church and share this? So that's how all this has evolved and come to place here. But fear was the big thing. And that's going to be the background emotion to all of this stuff that we're talking about. Explain a little bit what you learned in that fear, if you can.
Sure.
It's a big question.
Yeah, it is, and it's something that we all live with on a daily basis, whether it's fear for the lives of our loved ones, or fear can take over in so many areas of your life if you let it, and you really have to pay attention to your motivation and how you're acting, if you're acting out of fear or if you're acting out of faith. And your life will change so dramatically if you are operating out of faith rather than fear. Fear is what caused Ruby Ridge. I believe that wholeheartedly. It was fear on the side of my family of, many things. I won't go into my dad's political beliefs, but also fear on the side of the government. They didn't know what they were getting into, and they were scared of us, which was ludicrous to me because I just saw us as a little family, on top of a mountain with chickens and, a dad that had some pretty crazy views that some people didn't agree with. But what that turned into when those two things met was incredibly destructive. And if I can get across anything to you guys tonight, it's okay to have a cause, and it's okay to know what you believe and why you believe it. My dad taught me that from a very young age. But what is driving it and what is motivating it? And that is so important. You have to ask yourself that question. So in my life, fear caused a huge amount of destruction. After the destruction, fear kept me a prisoner. I was a prisoner of Ruby Ridge. I was a prisoner of, oh my gosh, I'm scared to death that my sister's driving down the road and her pickup just got her license because somebody might hit her and she might die, and then I've lost again someone else I love. So fear's a big one.
And fear will steer, I really love what you just said, because it's good to have your passions and to know what you believe, but what's behind that? Folks, I want to challenge you with a quick question, and that is, are you in fear today? And if you notice, there's always something to be scared of. And I'm gonna stick my neck out just a wee bit here. I think our media has learned that we perk up if they can get us scared.
Yeah.
So we go, oh, what's going on? I don't know how many of you are in fear today of your job situation, financial situation, health situations. There's just a lot of stuff out there, and it gets our attention. We turn the volume up and we tune into that. But what is motivating your life and perpetuating the ideas and decisions you make? And I'm so thankful for what you just said. That's going to lead to destruction if you allow it to. So you go through this dark time, and we're talking a decade or so of living like that all the time. You tried to have a nice home. One thing's affixing your family name. You just felt if you could have a good house and a good lifestyle, live the American dream.
American dream, that I should be happy.
Okay.
That's what makes us all happy, right?
You listed a lot of emotions. One of the two of those might match up with someone here. You also can list a lot of things you tried.
Yes.
What were some of the things you tried? You had some money for a while.
Yes.
That didn't fix it.
No, not by any stretch of the imagination. What actually ended up happening, my dad got $80,000, and then each of us three girls ended up with $800,000 apiece after the attorneys were paid. And a lot of mine went towards outside things. It went towards building my dream house, which was more of a burden. I won't even go into it than anything. A lot of it, say it, somebody can relate. A lot of it went towards, shopping. That was a huge Band-Aid I tried. A lot of it went towards just traveling and just distractions. I took a couple trips to Vegas, so trying to just ignore, shut down the pain, that sort of thing.
But nothing worked.
No, it was just one distraction to the next, one Band-Aid to the next, and it was endless.
And I meet people like that all the time. We're all working on bearing that, and the solution isn't in those things. So here we are, and we speed up the clock a little bit, 10 years down the road, a really significant event happened. I think what we're going to do is, let's go back to when you were 7 or before. Someone invited you to church, and would you just share with that little story of how you came to learn one verse of the Bible real quickly?
Totally. Well, my parents attended a very small Baptist church in Iowa, and it was a church that ended up hurting them very deeply. So from the time I was 7, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to maybe a church or a church family or church people hurting you. We get that. I get that because I started out in a small church at 7. I was bribed with a piece of candy to memorize John 3:16. Then my parents pulled me out of church. That was it. They never wanted anything to do with churches ever again after being hurt so deeply. So John 3:16 was embedded in my heart for a lot of years. I didn't think about it until I was 26.
Wow. And you go over to a friend's house, and we're going to jump back to where we left off.